All right. Randy, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, not too bad. Not too bad. Got a little sunshine today. How about you?
Yeah, I've been getting some sunshine. Rode my bike, did a little sprint, 30 minutes. It's the best mood enhancer ever.
Oh, there you go. Wait, was the bike ride 30 minutes or the sprint was 30 minutes?
Bike ride, it was a sprint.
Oh, the bike ride. You're sprinting on your bike.
Yeah, I just went ham for I just like had this route and I was like, can I do it in 30 minutes? And we did.
Ah, sick. Do you know
Yeah.
how far it was or how fast you were going?
Yeah, I think I averaged like almost 26K.
Okay.
Yeah, I was all right. I thought I was cooking. I thought I was gonna get way faster than that, but it wasn't. But whatever. We were booking it.
Weren't you just telling me about some guy that was doing, what did you say, 36, like a client of yours?
No, I did 30. He did 32 for 3 hours and 3 minutes, and he qualified for Worlds.
Damn, man. People are
Super
crazy.
impressive. Super impressive.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So today what we're gonna chat about is exercises that you can send it on. So this is for people who are maybe you're new to the gym, or maybe you've been working out for years and you're still kind of freaked out to go heavy. And the typical thing with that is a lot of times what happens is people will go to the gym and they'll do bodybuilding rep ranges for years and they'll see results and then they'll hit a place where they just kind of plateau. And in order to get over that plateau, typically what happens is you got to lift heavier. But if you're scared to do it because you're freaked out, you're going to get injured, you're going to be limited. So we have some exercises today, four categories of exercises: an upper body push, a lower body push, an upper body pull, and a lower body pull that you can send it on safely. And we're going to show you exactly how you can load it, exactly how you can do it, like starting tomorrow or today, if you have time to work out today when you hear this. So with that, Randy, take it away. I know you wanted to talk about the lower body pull stuff first.
Yeah. So, had a fair bit of clients recently that have had some fear around deadlifting. And there's a whole lot of polarizing opinions out there about the deadlift and ways to do it, ways not to do it. But these clients in particular, they have a lot of fear around injuring their low back because they both, yeah, they both run businesses and all that kind of stuff. So they can't be out for a day with back pain. Like they can't afford to do that. So when they go to the gym, they're like, I don't need to deadlift. I don't like I have no reason to do that, and the cost reward is just not it's just not worth it. It's just not worth the squeeze for them. But we do know that there is some benefit to getting some heavy weight in your hands and doing it with a hinge dominant pattern. So what I mean by that is just like sending your hips back in space. If you imagine like you're standing a foot from a wall and sending your hips back towards that wall and hitting the wall, that would be considered like a hip dominant movement pattern. So we want to build that up a little bit because then it can get the hamstrings going, it can get the glute going, and then it can actually fortify that low back as well, especially if we do it in a manner that allows them to progress over time instead of just being like, hey, go lift this bar from the floor. We can do it in some ways that set them up for success. So one way that I've been doing that is setting up these pins. So there's a lot of gyms have safety pins for squats or in a squat rack. And you can set up a bar on those pins. So you can set the pins at different heights. And so what I've been using is these pins. And basically I set up the pins so that the bar sits at their knee height or roughly under or just above their knee. And I get them into that hip hinge pattern that we just spoke about. And they just grab hold of the bar like a regular deadlift grip, two pronated hands, and stand it up. And I've found that that has put them in a safe position to do the movement comfortably and confidently to the point where I'm not even encouraging them to go heavier. They're like, oh, that's really easy. I want to go heavier. Boom. Like we just struck gold. That's what I'm hoping to do. And it's nice that I don't even have to nudge them. And by having the bar set up at your knees, as opposed to it being set just above your ankles, makes it a lot more accessible for people that have a little bit of fear around the deadlift pattern. Now, if you don't have squat pins or pins in a squat rack or anything, but you have something you can set the bar up on, you can put you can use blocks or the bar is just higher up. And then another variation that's worth trying too, if that's like too much of a setup. If you have one of those trap bars where you stand in the middle of the bar, and utilizing that piece of equipment to build up the deadlift pattern is a really safe way to go with that one. And I find with setting it up that way, they have no fear around it, and they can just put in maximum effort and not be like terrified of like how they're going to feel the next day. So that's a big win.
Right. And one question that comes that I think is going to come up because I was thinking about it as you were explaining is like, well, what if we're trying to target the hamstrings in a deadlift? Why don't we just use a seated leg curl or a lying leg curl? And the answer to that is that's true. You can use a seated leg curl. You can do single leg hip bridges. You can do tons of stuff that's going to get the hamstrings involved and strengthen them. However, when you're doing a deadlift, you're using your body and your muscles in a chain, which is how you would use it in real life. So when you're doing a deadlift, you're not just specifically training the hamstrings. You're training the you're training the plantar flexors of the foot or being able to press the gas down in a car. You're training the hamstrings, you're training the glutes, you're training your low back, you're training your lats, you're training everything in a chain. So nothing is really going to be able to mimic that deadlift quite the way that a deadlift does. Yes, you can get hamstring stimulation through, a ton of different exercises, but you're not going to get the bang for your buck and the use of the actual body for producing force from the ground up like you will with a deadlift. So that's a huge reason why I know Randy encourages all his clients and people to learn how to deadlift safely, learn how to deadlift properly. And there is a lot of like red flags that you can pay attention to. If you're a person who has had back pain in the past, you'll know if a deadlift feels sketchy. But when you get a deadlift feeling good, you're not really worried about it messing you up because you just know you feel really strong in that lift. And that's a really good place to get to for everybody, regardless of if you're brand new or you're an athlete or you are someone trying to, increase your strength. Like you all want to get to that point because regardless of, what you're doing, you're going to deadlift to some capacity, even if you're not in a gym.
You got to lift things off the ground.
You got to lift things off the ground. So
Yeah.
let's move to the lower body push. So
Yeah.
the lower body push would be, we're gonna stick with the squat. Now this could be a lunge, it could be a jump, it could be anything where you're kind of like pushing the ground away from you, but we're gonna stick with the squat. So one of the best ways I think to learn how to squat properly and be able to send it is again the use of pins. And there's a really cool squat technique by this guy. It's called the Anderson squat. And I think it was Randy, you told me about how he figured that out, how he dug a hole in the ground and he had this bar with these, basically like a barbell before barbells were a thing. And he dug a hole in the ground so his feet would he would set himself up so in the first week of his training he would only squat the bar a quarter of the way up, and then each week he would dig the hole deeper until he was at the bottom of his squat and pushing the weight up. And that is like such a cool idea. Like I really want to do that before I die, actually dig a hole in the
Yeah.
ground and
Yeah.
use that as a loading technique. But that's an awesome way to progressively overload the squat, but also progressively overload the range of motion. Because yeah, you might feel sketchy in a squat, but if I only told you you only had to stand it up 2 inches, everybody could do that. You might not do it efficiently, but you could do it. And so the pins really allow you to, yes, you need to understand squat technique. You need to understand the relationship between your torso and your shin angle and how to move your hips. And there's still things to learn. But the pins are a really good way to set yourself up for success so that you can, in week one, squat a range of motion that feels really comfortable. And then either in that same session or the next week, just drop it down. One pin, one pin, one pin. And in most squat racks, the pins are like an inch apart. So
Mhm.
it's a really good way to do that. And typically what happens is as long as the load is manageable, your body wants to move efficiently. So if you put a really heavy weight on the bar and you don't know how to squat, it's going to look like, one of those YouTube fail videos of like young kids ego lifting. It's going to look terrible. But if you like reduce the weight to something manageable, and you honestly move into that exercise with intention, and you keep you keep a position that feels good and feels efficient, you're probably just going to get better form just by repetition. And that's a really good way to increase the squat or learn the squat pattern. Another way that I've been doing, and this kind of touches on something that we talked about last week, was I have a client right now, kind of brand new. He moves pretty well, but he's brand new to weightlifting, and I just have him goblet squat. So that's just holding a dumbbell at your chest and squatting. And what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, what I want you to do is take 10 seconds to get to the bottom, pause for 10 seconds under tension, and then stand up and do that 3 times. And this is really good for the brain. And you don't need a lot of weight because of the long holds and the long tempos. So that's a way, if you don't feel comfortable with your bar on your back, is get in a goblet squat position and just take 10 seconds to get to the bottom and 10 seconds to pause. And again, your brain will figure out how to move properly 9 times out of 10 with that variation. So that would be like a lower body push. And now, Ren, you want to do upper body push or upper body pull? We'll take one of those away next.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think you nailed it with the, if feel like having a bar on your back is like just to conclude or wrap up the
Yeah,
squat.
yeah, sure.
If wrapping up, like, you have a bar on your back, you never done that before, doing the anything anterior loaded or loaded in front of you, like grabbing your dog and squatting your dog or your child, like hugging your child and then squatting down, you're so right. Like if you hug something or you have something, like you said, the goblet squat position or the goblet position out in front of you, weights out in front, and you try to like just sit your feet, sit your hips between your feet, like your body 9 times out of 10 is going to figure out how to do it. And then you're well on your way to having a really nice, like good feeling squat pattern that's going to build your legs up for the rest of your life. So, yeah, I really like how you kind of threw that in there. Yeah, I'll take on the, or I'll take the pull. So for the upper body pull, I've found that, a chin up is just like, if there, every client I've ever had, like if they can't do a chin up, I ask them if they'd like to do a chin up, and without a doubt, they were like, I would love to be able to do a chin up. Like it's just like it's every time. Like if they have never done one before, they want to be able to do one. It's just like such a marker of like, you're strong if you can pull your chin above a bar. Like it's just that's just, there's no denying it at that point, right? So I like to just get people right away hanging from a bar in any way. So that's like an easy one. Like how long can you hang from a bar for? And then we can start to, layer in things where it's like rather than just hanging on, can you create some tension there? Can you get your lats going? Can you pull your shoulders away from your ears? Like all that kind of stuff. Can you get your core going, squeezing your feet together, like all that stuff. But I find the chin up is like, so that's when your palms are facing you, generally. I'll get people to just like, find a bar, use a bench or anything that you can stand on that's going to bring you closer to the bar. You jump and get your chin over the bar and you just try to hold there for as long as you can. And that is like, that there's no fear there. You get to use your legs, you get to jump up, you get to hold and squeeze as hard as you can and like go for as long as you can. Put in maximum effort to something like that. And no doubt you're going to come down, and if that's your first time doing that, you're probably going to come down like vibrating because it's like, holy crap, like I just like held my body weight. Like even if it was just for a second, it doesn't matter. You still like held your body weight. It's a pretty big deal. And then there's so many ways that you can take that. You can take the maximum time you can hold the chin over. You can jump to get your chin over and then see how long it takes you to lower to the fully extended position at the bottom. And I just find that that is one of those things where you can go all out with that and not have to worry about what's happening. And you mentioned earlier about doing a deadlift versus like using a machine. It's the same. Like you do a bicep curl versus doing you guys are all going to find out how much we love bicep curls in future episodes, I'm sure. But like you do a chin up versus a bicep curl, like you do that chin up holding yourself there, you would have to probably do like 20-pound dumbbell curls, like for 20 to 50 reps for you to feel the same kind of stimulus that you just got from just trying to hang yourself, like trying to hang from a bar like
Trying to
that.
hang yourself.
So yeah, that's right. Don't do that.
I
We're not
had to call it
encouraging that.
out. Everyone else is gonna be listening.
But yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Listen,
But yeah, I mean that's what I have on the poll. You got to add to that, Ty?
yeah, I think one thing that we said as we were planning, kind of going through what these drills were going to be for these four categories. And the biggest issue is not going to be whether you see results with this. The biggest issue is, are you going to get bored? Because these four movements, you don't have to do anything else to get good at them. Like, you do not have to do anything else to get good at them. If you want to get good at squatting, you squat. If you want to get good at deadlifting, you deadlift. If you want to get good at doing chin ups, you do chin ups. Like, there are, now you just have to be patient with it, and you have to be a little bit creative in how you load it. Because, like Randy said, if you can't do a chin up, well, okay, cool, but can you do a part of it? Could you jump up and hold yourself for a second? Can you lower yourself down? Can you just work on like the actual like scapular retraction, or getting the shoulders away from the ears and the bottom of the chin up with your arms straight? Like, there's so many different variations that you can use to load it. But if you just said, I'm only going to do chin ups to be able to do a chin up, that would be the most successful way to go about it. You just have to be patient, and you have to be consistent with the loading techniques, because if you do the holds for 3 seconds week one, and then week two you try and do chin ups, and you just do like sloppy chin ups where you're jumping up and then lowering down fast, you're never going to see results. But the thing that's going to be the biggest roadblock is people getting bored, not actually not seeing results. And the last category that we have is
Mhm.
upper body push. So upper body push can be divided into two subcategories. We've got a horizontal push like a bench press, and we've got a vertical push like an overhead press. If you've never done any pressing movements in the gym ever, start with a horizontal press. Just start with, you could do a full barbell bench press day one. Definitely. Now, if you're a person where you have like some shoulder stuff, or, like your shoulder just feels unstable, then that would be a time where we like to implement something called a floor press or a press from pins. And what that does is it sets you up so you don't go into the lower ranges. You just stop here. So if I'm laying on my back, the floor is going to stop my elbow from going back. And what that's going to do is that's just going to take away a lot of the range of motion where the shoulder can be unstable for some people. And if you just do floor presses, so laying on your back on a floor and doing bench presses off the floor, or you use pins again and you set the pins up so that when you come down, you're only at 90 degrees and you don't go into that bottom motion, that's a really good way to start pressing safely and effectively. And a lot of people who can't do a push up, let's say, I have a client right now who can't do a push up, but she can press 80 pounds on a pin press for 5 reps. So she's feeling strong. She's learning how to recruit her whole body. She's learning how to, use her legs in the bench press and everything. And she's like figuring out ways each week on how she can create more force inside of her body, or intrinsic force, to actually be stronger in the bench press. So that would be a good way to do horizontal pressing. Another really good way for vertical pressing or overhead pressing, because sometimes, low back feels junky in an overhead press, or you just don't know how to like line up your ribs and your hips so that your core's engaged and your low back's not vulnerable. A really good way to do that is to just get into what's called a half kneeling position. So that would be like, if you kneel down on both legs, then step one leg up. So you're just one knee's on the floor, and then just take a dumbbell in one hand and just press the weight over your head. That's a really nice way to expose people to an overhead press variation. And the single arm, because you can rotate a little bit, you don't quite need as much mobility as you would need with the barbell movement, or even a two-arm dumbbell press. Another way, as I'm explaining this, is, let's say the overhead movement just doesn't feel good. Then simple thing to do that, if you don't have the mobility, get on an incline bench and just knock it back one notch. So then you're not pushing fully
Mhm.
overhead, but you're pushing just out in front of you. And again, this is one of those things where it's like super simple, but you might get bored, and that will be the biggest limitation is we can start pressing here, and next week we can press here, and then 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 in 8 weeks your brain has figured out how to recruit the right muscles, how to stabilize the joint properly. And in 8 weeks, a movement that was bothering your shoulder now just doesn't, because over that time, when you were just creeping up inch by inch, your body was figuring it out how to create stability in that movement. So those are my favorite ways to get an upper body push, and get people to send it. Now, a lot of people, I think, and Randy, I'm going to ask you to like wrap that up if you had any other ideas. But one thing that I get a lot is a lot of people are like, well, why do I got to lift heavy? And that's a really, I think, I think it's a big limitation in the way people see weight training. And I want to pass this over to you because I think you're going to answer this even better than I will. And I want to ask you, is there any other push variations that you have in mind? And what would you say to the person who's going like, yeah, but like why is lifting heavy so important? Like why do I need to do that?
Hmm. Yeah, well, I think you nailed it with the pushing. And I think we've got some good ones. So to recap that, we did the pin deadlift, right? So just progressing the range of motion. You had the squat, right? So again, using pins, progressing the range of motion. If putting a bar on your back's like very foreign, then we're going back to that goblet or something front loaded and squatting from there. We talked about the chin up and how we can progress that over time. You mentioned there being a horizontal and a vertical press, and you nailed those perfectly. And just to kind of wrap, to also, we have the vertical pull with the chin up for a pull. If you really wanted something in there, horizontal movement for the pull would be just like a back row. So you can do one knee on a bench and then just start to, get a dumbbell, a kettlebell, whatever it is, pull that weight into your hips kind of thing, almost like you're packing the shoulder a little bit and then reaching down, make sure you get that full reach. The arm locks out all the way, maybe a little extra reach towards the floor at the bottom, just so we can get that shoulder moving well. And that'll assist in, the chin up, that'll assist in doing the push up, as you mentioned, just getting those shoulders kind of moving around and getting strong through those ranges of motion. And yeah, so I think we gave I think we got a really good all-encompassing thing that like you could walk into a gym and hit all four of those patterns. Well, I guess we talked about six, given the upper body breakdown. But even if you did all six, you're good. You could be in and out, in under 40, 45 minutes, or you could just pick two of them and
For
go
sure.
back and forth. How many times have we done that, right? Where we set a 20-minute timer and we're like, okay, we're gonna do a push pull. I got a press variation and I got some kind of pull variation. I'm gonna do 5 reps of each one, maybe progress in weight, and I'm gonna go back and forth, rest where I need in 20 minutes. I'm going to walk away from that feeling like I've done a lot of good things in that short period of time. And then in terms of like the importance of going heavy, I mean, it, like I think the main thing I've seen with going heavy and just practicing that is that it brings a different level of attention and focus to the training session. So I've seen it all too often where people go to the gym and this has been, clients of mine that go to the gym because like doctor said, like, hey, you got to be more active. It's like, okay, but like there's not a single cell in their body that like they're excited about going to the gym. Like and then they train and they train and they train and they wonder why they're not changing. Like it's not about the training program, it's about their mindset. It's about their mentality and their awareness or attention when they go to the gym. And the attention is like the intention that they're putting behind their exercise is is so low that it's going to take forever with that low amount of intention to get any better. It's like if you want to get better at a language and your intention is really low every time you study, you could study for 5 hours, but if you like you're not intentional about it and you're not picking up on where you're getting things wrong or whatever, it's going to take you forever to learn that language. So I find with going heavy, that's like, it's the difference. That could be the difference between 15 pounds and 17.5 pounds. But the first time you do 17.5 pounds, you better believe that your brain is going to be more aware that like, oh, this is heavier. Like this is getting a little more serious here. And if I don't pay attention, like something could go wrong. I could get hurt. So I better pay attention. So I think it does get misconstrued with, I mean, meatheads like us maybe saying like, hey, you got to go heavier. It's like, okay, it's another meathead like saying you got to go heavier. It's like, it's more so along the lines of I really think that it helps set the intention and it helps people focus in on what they're doing. And it doesn't have to be some huge like amount of weight that you all of a sudden put on the bar that you do. It can be 5 pounds. It can be the little change plates that you put on the end of that bar. You never done it before. Try it for 5 reps, like and I think that it really does like it just creates a higher level of intention behind the exercise. And we talk often about like Big Bang and Big Bang for your time. That's why we put together this quick podcast on like, exercises that you can do where you can have high effort and you can push and not have to worry about little things going wrong while you're doing it. And I think that this kind of goes hand in hand, like, trying to push yourself just a little bit in terms of the weight. So you get a little bit uncomfortable and it makes your brain like snap into attention. And then we start to really start cooking with gas with what we can do with training.
Totally. And that's like, you get the client in person who loves to chat, right? And everybody's got them. You got that client that just comes in and they just want to talk the whole time. And, as much as you don't want them to not talk, but you also want them to do something while they're there. And I always love, I'll put a weight on the bar and they're chatting and chatting and chatting and chatting. And then they get the weight on their back and they just go, okay, I got to focus. And I don't have to say nothing, because they just know like, all right, I got to show up for this because I'm not going to be able to do this if I'm not focused. So that really hits the nail on the head. And yeah, and at the end of the day, the way your body gets a real change from training is through adaptation. And in order to have adaptation, you have to just push the limit a little bit more. You don't need to squat 2 times body weight. No, that's not what we're saying at all, not even close. However, you do need to create adaptation. And one way we can do that is with added load. And so you hit the nail on the head. And I think that we have really touched on those 4 categories. And like I said, you could do this. Randy and I have been training for probably like 15 years, and we still use the same techniques that we're talking about in this video. You could use this and probably for the rest of your life and see results in 10 years using the exact same training techniques. The biggest limitation is you getting bored, not
Hmm.
the lack of results. So take what you will from this discussion and implement it in your own training. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me at Ty Wolfley on Instagram, or reach out to Randy. Randy, plug yours.
At RJ Training
Yeah, let's go. And the guys on YouTube posting outdoor workout videos all the time.
all the time.
All right, that's it. We'll see you next week.
Peace.